Jews deal with the world we live in. So book number 2 is called Deepening the Dialogue. And it's been out now, what, Josh? Is it 3 years, 2.5 years?
4 years, yeah.
4 years already? How
Yeah,
time
2019 it came out, yeah.
So,
2019 and a pandemic later, you know.
so, yeah, Deepening the Dialogue was a radical attempt to grapple with Israel as it really is. And that's a problem, because most books, most writers, most speakers who talk about, deal with, write about Israel, are selling their point of view. That's fine, but they're selling their point of view. What I wanted to do was to bring together a group of people who could talk about literally what was the Zionism that motivated the founders of Israel. Now, I don't mean Herzl. I mean those who signed the Declaration of Independence, those in 1948 who led the Jewish people into what's called the Third Jewish Commonwealth. There was another problem I wanted to move away from. Most books are happily conceived to allow American scholars, rabbis, teachers, lay people, whatever, tell Israel what's wrong with it. If you practically all the books are like that. You know, Israel could be, should be, ought to be, whatever. I said, wouldn't it be fun to have a book equally balanced between Israeli authors and American Jewish authors, right? And let them argue and talk what should be the basis of the conversation. You know that Israel has no constitution. That is not a good thing. Israel was intended to have a constitution. It was agreed to in 1948. As a matter of fact, there's something that Josh, I never actually heard about until I got into this. There are a whole bunch of shelf constitutions. That's what they're called, shelf constitutions. For example, the Israel Democracy Institute has a shelf constitution. They went through a whole process. They drew up a constitution and put it on a shelf. And other institutions have done the same thing. No one has been able to bring a constitution up for serious consideration. If not a constitution, what does Israel have that defines the founding vision? Again, not Herzl, the 48 founding vision. Declaration. And it became clear to me that it's the Declaration of Independence. To be clear, the Declaration of Independence is not a democratically conceived document. It was written by a small group of people, and it was written rather quickly. It wasn't a matter of months and months and months of focus group. No, a few weeks, people were hotboxed in. Ben Gurion was screaming his head out, and you're going to do it, go, sit, and eventually, it was managed to be signed on Independence Day. So it doesn't reflect the broad will of the Israel community. It reflects an elite view of the political Zionist leaders. That's one. Number two, these leaders were overwhelmingly Ashkenazi. That's just the way the power structure was. Israel today, I don't know, Josh, what is it, 60% Mizrahi? Give or take, 60% Mizrahi. And the document is an elitist document reflecting an Ashkenazi worldview. What's unusual about an Ashkenazi? They came mainly out of Poland, out of Russia, where at the same time socialism and certain political streams, which were very interested in human rights, were powerful. That's reflected in the Declaration of Independence. Okay? Then they had a problem. They had several rabbis in the group to approve. Some of my best friends are rabbis. I give a few. No.
Worse things, yeah.
And the rabbis wanted God in the document. Ben Gurion probably said something to the English equivalent of "over my dead body," or maybe he said, "Who's God?" I don't know exactly. And one of my favorite pictures of Ben Gurion is of him standing on his head doing yoga exercises. This was his spirituality. I did have a chance to meet personally with Ben Gurion in his home shortly before he passed away. That was kind of a privilege. In any event, what to do with God? I would say, thank God for the Hebrew language, which does not have capital letters. No, it has no capital letters. So a compromise at the last moment was reached, calling for the Rock of Israel to support the new Jewish state. Well, you could read, no capital letters, Rock of Israel, Jewish tradition, the people, the history, God. You can read it any way you want. So we have Rock of Israel there. The only thing is that one of the signatories to the declaration did put in Be'ezrat Hashem with God's help. He just snuck it into his signature. I mean, but that's okay. It didn't harm him. The Declaration of Independence sets out a set of values reflecting the community which I described, okay? Not claiming it to be majoritarian, not claiming it to be Sephardic, Ashkenazic, specific. It remains a great document. Then, when the Netanyahu government was reestablished this time and started promoting a whole series of resolutions, which some of us felt, including me, was a strong move toward dictatorial, authoritarian. I never heard of a phrase, authoritarian democracy. That's what he was promoting. That's what he is promoting. And the opposition suddenly starts saying that that's a violation of the Declaration of Independence. So that right now, my book, after 4 years, is selling all over the place. Right? The publisher called me up last week. Rabbi Davids, are you a prophet? Lo navi anochi, v'lo ben navi. I am neither a prophet nor the son of a prophet.
Nor do we turn a prophet. Yeah.
I just happened to write a book and edit a book that is absolutely on the table right now. It is the shared basis for conversation among all sides. One of the great chapters in that book was written by Josh. I want to just stop this, let Josh talk about his chapter.
Good.
And where he went with it.
Thank you, Rav Davids, and it's really, I think, it couldn't be a more important conversation and more poignant right now. It's also, I think, a really nice way to honor Rabbi Nico, as coming into the community, as we're talking about these values and what does it mean to be a Zionist or a Reform Zionist or a progressive or liberal, all of those things. And the question of democracy is incredibly important. This is the sign of our Reform movement that you too could print out and put in front of your synagogue as well, that we say we say Jewish and democratic in the same breath. Sort of like in Lacharodi, where we say Shamor v'Zachor b'dibur echad. We think that those values are it. And I just want to thank Stan for so many things. First of all, this book really spoke to me, especially about the idea of talking to Israelis. Okay? It's not an obvious. Sometimes we talk about a relationship with Israel in this sort of esoteric, non-tangible way. A relationship. What does it mean to have a relationship with a country? But having a relationship with Israel I think should be predicated on having a relationship also with Israelis. And so the ability to talk to each other and learn from that. And I just want to say that, like, I would not be in my position if it were not for Rabbi David's. Okay, that like in the conversation that we had, I won't give you all the whole long story, but I said, hey, should I apply for this? I have a friend who's looking to apply for this. And he goes, tell your friend that maybe you should do it. And me, you know what? Long story short, or to make a short story long, I ended up here. So both thank you and. Yeah, well, remains to be seen. So I want to build on just setting the scene a little bit for Megillat HaAtzmaut, and then show how a little bit, just as I think Rav David set it up really perfectly in terms of the current situation in which we find ourselves. Because I'm going to maintain here, should I stand just so we can see each other better? Yeah, okay. I'm going to maintain that I think at the core of this crisis in which we find ourselves, how many of you have been following on the news a little bit? Anybody go to a protest here in Northern California? Tomorrow, I just want to say the chair of ARTSA, one of our leaders, Daryl Messinger, is going to be speaking after, there you go, Saving Israeli Democracy. It's after the congregation meeting, okay? So don't worry, like you can get both. Yeah, exactly. It's at 2 p.m. in Sunnyvale. Yeah. And so I encourage you to go, and I say that as a movement. But Ben Gurion had this vision, and it's so interesting, the God piece and sort of the theological or sanctification piece of everything that's of Israel in general, but specifically of the Declaration of Independence. How do we say the Declaration in Hebrew? No, it's not Hachrazah, actually. Huh? Megillah. Yeah. Megillat HaAtzmaut. Okay? What's a Megillah? A scroll. Okay, that Ben Gurion had, and this is the magic of Israel, is that it's being reinvented with the Jewish structure. Okay, with the Jewish traditional model. Okay, that can then, even if the content is secular, in Hebrew we would say a hatrasa. How do we say that in English? Like a latris, like to almost as a rebellion, almost as a stick it to you. I'm going to use the format that we know from Jewish life with secular content. So Ben Gurion wanted to invent a new holiday. Okay, and he called it Yom HaAtzmaut, right? Independence Day, right? What do holidays have in the Jewish world? Okay, well, first of all, we have a tefillah, right? Okay, there's a ritual element, and we have liturgy. Okay, we have specific words that we say on holidays, right? Specific brachot, specifically we say Hallel, and we add that in. That's a question in some circles whether you do say Hallel or you don't on Yom HaAtzmaut. Okay, you have a festive meal, right? I call it the Yom HaAtzmaut sacrifice, because the tradition, or Korban Yom HaAtzmaut, because the tradition in Israel is to have massive barbecues. Okay, and you can even see, like some major parks, like in Tel Aviv or in Jerusalem, you can see the smoke wafting up above. And I said, oh, this is what it must have been like to be, at the temple in Jerusalem with all these sacrifices going on, and you smell it. But just like on all of the festival holidays, we have a scroll, we have a Megillah that's associated with it. Okay, like on Purim, we read Esther, Tisha B'Av, right? Eicha, Lamentations, so on. Right? In Pesach, we read Shir Shirim, Song of Songs. You get the point, okay? And so the Megillat HaAtzmaut would actually be the sixth Megillah that we have in our canon, and that this document would be part of sort of the evolution of our sacred Jewish bookshelf. Okay? Could be somewhat presumptuous. Okay, or Yomrani to say that, like, well, I'm going to add to the sacred Jewish bookshelf. But he did commission a sofer stam, okay, a scribe, to write this Megillah. You can see the print, okay, what it looks like. And next time you're in Rabbi Nico's office, you can see it hanging on the wall there. He commissioned a sofer to write it on a cloth, right, on a piece of parchment, okay? There's a whole famous story about the actual declaration when it was just a blank piece of paper and he kind of, read it. But that it would do that. So what does it actually do? Stan mentioned the values that it mentioned. That's the second half. It's divided in two. In fact, the first half is the story, is our Zionist narrative, sort of, is the story that we tell ourselves about ourselves. Okay? And if you weren't clear as to what our narrative is, it's going to tell you. Right? Here it is in English. Should I make that a little smaller just so everyone can see that? Yeah. Okay, good. Right? That says, Kan be'eretz Yisrael kam ha'am Yehudi, right? Like here in the land of Israel is the birthplace of the Jewish people, okay? This is a narrative. What is a narrative not? Fact, right? Okay, because you can debate that. Were the people of Israel actually born in the land of Israel? Right? Where did we get the Torah? Sinai. You're like, Amazon? No. I'm like, no. We got it at Sinai, okay, which is not in Israel. For like, yes, 15 years, okay, right? 67 to 82, right? Okay, it was. It wasn't at the time when, we received the Torah there at Ma'amad Har Sinai. Also, our Judaism is a post-Talmudic Judaism. Where is the major Talmud that the authoritative Talmud compiled? Bavel, right? In Babylon, which is decidedly not Israel. Okay, so you can argue with the narrative, but just understand that this was important for us to lay down. Just like if you read, in the beginning the earth was created in 6 days and God rested on the seventh, you're like, well, actually, I'm a astrophysicist and I don't think that that's actually how it happened. You're like, okay, it's a narrative, right? That's a story that we are telling ourselves, and it comes basically very quickly from the formation of the Jewish people up until the Zionist enterprise in 1897 through to the Holocaust and then the establishment of the state. Very important to, sort of canonize that and put that in our narrative. Now, what are we saying? In addition to it not being historical fact, okay, the values that we put in are incredibly important. However, what are they also not? Right, and Stan mentioned this too. They are not legally binding. Right? It is decidedly not a constitution. So when we read, okay, that you can see that, right? That it is, that it will be open for Jewish immigration, for the ingathering of exiles, blah, blah, blah. And here are the values. It'll be based on freedom, justice, and peace, as envisaged by the prophets of Israel, okay, which we, Reform Jews, we hold up those values very high. And social and political rights to all of its inhabitants, irrespective of religion, race, or sex, and will guarantee freedom of religion, conscious language, education, and culture. Okay? Sounds good, right? Right? And I think that is a big debate, whether these are, sort of Western universal progressive values that not everyone agreed with, okay, based on, if you compare it to the American Declaration of Independence and all of those things. I'll just say that 2 Sundays ago, I had the opportunity to read this in Jerusalem at the Kotel, okay, with trope marks, okay, with cantillation, okay, that they put in. And is anybody like a geek about trope? Anybody? Okay, so a cantor, yeah, I just say, oh, good. Yeah, I'll just say that the first half that tells the story is in Megillah trope, and the second half that's prophetic is in Haftarah trope. Okay? We're clever people. Like we're smart. So this is a ritual reading it, but let me take you through a little bit of the process and about the constitutionality of it and bring us up to what we are, because let's look at what's happening right now. So we had this declaration of the establishment of the State of Israel, and it says in it, in paragraph 19, no later than October 1st, 1948, we will have a constitution. Okay? It's got a lot of late fees at the public library, okay? That's like, it says it outlines that we will have a constitution. We did establish a committee, a constitutional committee. Okay, Vadat Chukah. How many of you have ever sat in a committee before? I promise. It is the best way to get anything done. Okay? But essentially, what was the reason that the committee had all those shelved constitutional drafts, right? Why couldn't they agree on having a constitution? What do you think? Just a shout out. This is, okay, too many voices. Well, yes. I mean, that's anything, right? What was, what were these competing visions? Because some people came and said, we have a constitution, and it's right behind those two doors. Okay, right. Right, and it says here, right, would unleash a divisive conflict between religious and state authorities. That is, at the essence, the center of this conflict. To say, wait a second, we don't need something that's going to be really binding, or I think any lawyers in the crowd here that has supreme legal authority. That is what a constitution does, and that's what it gives. We have one in the United States of America, and everything else will be judged by that. So let's look. What happened? Okay, we need to have a constitution to ensure religious freedom, to safeguard the principle of separation of powers. Okay, in America we call that C and B, right? Checks and balances. Okay, incredibly important and should be the foundation of democracy. Okay, and here it is, the supremacy of civil law right there. But those that said, well, it's nice, but it's not really a good time for it right now, and we're fighting a war, right? It would be, politically divisive. By the way, we spend a lot of time as Reform Jews in these institutions that Stan has many, great mileage there being, I think, it feels like gaslighting, essentially, when someone says, yeah, be a lamb, and for the sake of unity, just compromise on all of your values, okay? If you wouldn't mind, why do you care about if your rabbis can convert people? Or for the sake of Jewish unity, wouldn't you? You're in favor of unity, aren't you? We have to. When Nico and I were there 2 weeks ago, we're sitting in these committees where they said, well, for unity, it might be offensive to some people to recognize LGBTQ, the community, and so, and we're saying, are you out of your mind? No, these are values, and we're not compromising them, and that's what I spend a lot of time doing, and Stan has spent many years doing. So let's look at what happened. Can I just give you like a brief technical thing? Sheldon, we're okay. In that, they started the process of building out a constitution, okay? It's called the Harari decision to say, wait, let's just start chapter by chapter, and we'll put it, law by law, okay? And it'll constitute what we call a basic law, a chok yesod, okay? And those there's a special category that are meant to have sort of constitutional weight. And we have that. We have a bunch of them. There are 13 right now. I'll just give them to you. They're coming up. You can see some of them right now. Okay, the latest one was in 2018 called the nation-state law. How many of you remember that one that passed? Okay, very controversial. By the way, to which our movement said, why do you need a basic law stating that Israel is the nation-state of the Jewish people? We have it in the Declaration of Independence, right? We have it right there already. Why do we need that? And you can get sort of the ideological lines under which this fell. I want to focus on just one piece of legislation here. In 1992, by the way, with the Likud majority Knesset, they passed, before Rabin was elected, okay, they passed a law called Chok Kvod Adam V'Cheruto, a law called of human dignity and liberty, essentially maintaining human rights in Israel, right? Because that's the third aspect of what a democracy should be. Should be majority rule, power of the people, okay? Should be checks and balances or supervision and limitations over different branches of government, right? That's, how many of you remember, like, you ever read Alexis de Tocqueville, like, way back in the day at some point, where he warned against the tyranny of the majority, okay? You don't want that. And the third is that democracy should protect universal human rights for people, right? Even civil rights, I would say. Okay, so that's what this law said. And the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court at the time is a guy called Aharon Barak. Incredible figure, okay? Holocaust survivor, came to Israel as a young child, as a 12, 13-year-old, and rose to the ranks of being the Chief Justice. And he basically said, it was a court case in 2005 1995 involving a bank case called Bank Mizrahi. That's how everyone knows, the Bank Mizrahi case. Okay, that gave the opportunity for Barak to establish judicial review. Lawyers, anyone? You may remember this no one's a lawyer here? Okay, wow. It's usually not the case in a Jewish crowd, but okay. They're just not admitting it. So we have this in the United States. It happened just a while, it happened 220 years ago in 1803, a case called Marbury versus Madison, right? Okay, where we established judicial review, where that would have, that would be a ruling through which all other rulings would be judged. Okay? And that is the case right now in the Israeli Supreme Court, and that is at the source of what many are deeply upset about, including the current Justice Minister, a guy called Yariv Levin, and another member of Knesset, a guy called Simcha Rotman. You should know these names if you haven't. He's a Knesset member, he's not a minister, and he is the head of the Constitution Justice and Legal Committee, essentially, Vadat Chok Chuka Umishpat. Okay, and he's the one who chooses what legislation goes before the Knesset. Incidentally, I will say that the immediate past chair of that committee, okay, is member of Knesset Rabbi Gilad Kariv, who's the first Reform rabbi to be in the Knesset, and you can see him and hear from him live here at the Palo Alto JCC. Is he speaking in Hebrew? Oh, okay. Even if it's worth it. So the question that we're looking at, and essentially what Rothman and Levine, and Rothman is a pure ideologue on this. He's written 2 books about the role of the Supreme Court. Okay, is this basic conflicting of values? Should a democracy be supervision and limitation over the parliament and the government? Okay, or should the rule of the people and the Knesset should decide? Okay, I'd like to say that we, as a movement at least, are on the side of against the tyranny of the majority, the protection of rights, and that we desperately want this Declaration of Independence. Right, it may need some refreshing. Right, as you said, it was cobbled together in 2-3 weeks. We can go down the rabbit hole on some of the different versions that were proposed and some different ideas. It's fascinating, but that we want that to be the basis, especially good old paragraph 13 that I showed you with the rights and what it's going to protect, to be the basis of a constitution. Okay, and what's resulted in that is massive protests. Okay. As you can see, this is what, aerial views. The best one actually is, it's like a 200-foot long copy of the Declaration of Independence that you can see from outer space. Okay, not really, but okay, you get the point. And that's what it's over. And Ehud Barak, by the way, just so you know, in February, the president of our movement, of the Reform movement in North America, Rabbi Rick Jacobs, spoke at the protest in Tel Aviv. It was kind of like a typical Friday night crowd here at Shir Hadash. There were 160,000 people there, okay, that he spoke to, and that was an important message in Hebrew, important message for us as a movement to say we're standing in solidarity with those who see, Judaism and democracy on the same plane. And afterwards, Ehud Barak, a former prime minister, also spoke, and he said, listen, the dividing line is pretty simple. You're either in the D9 camp, D9 is fancy Hebrew for bulldozer, okay, or you're in the Megillat HaAtzmaut camp, okay? Either you're trying to bulldoze through legislation, which he's saying is not pure of heart because there are many different agendas that we can see from the various parties that make up the current coalition, okay? Or you're in the Megillat HaAtzmaut camp, which basically establishes human rights for everyone. Okay. What I think is important, and with this I probably have to wind down. Maybe we have, time for a few questions or something like that, and then Stan will correct him. Yeah. is that, first of all, we have a role in this, okay? What I think is critically important to understand is that Israel is the project of the Jewish people. Right? I hear often, we as North American Jews, except for those of us who, hold Israeli passports, okay, we're not citizens, we don't vote, we don't pay taxes, and we don't serve in the army. Okay, so what position does that give us to dictate what should happen in Israel? Okay, it's a fair argument. Okay, except here's the important piece. Right? We're not dictating security policy. Okay, I would never presume to do that for a place that I don't live, and especially if we didn't. We're not sending our kids, to serve, and we shouldn't do that. However, we do want to be involved, and we have the opportunity to be involved in this intra-Jewish conversation, in this moment where we can ask ourselves together, what are the values in which we want the state of Israel to be, and we want ourselves to live by? Okay? We fight for the same things in Jerusalem that we fight for in Washington, D.C. Okay? And we wouldn't want those to be different. Okay? I meet a lot of, especially young people, who tell me right now, oh, Israel and Zionism are antithetical to social justice. And I'm saying, well, wait a second. Would you say the United States of America is antithetical to social justice? They say, no, well, there are, there's the MAGA group, and then there are other people protesting that group. I said, okay, why do you see that as different than what's happening in Israel? Okay? That's no different. Okay, and if you remember a date way long ago in American history, sometime around November 9th, 2016, okay, when it was clear that Donald Trump won the election, there was an outpouring of response from people who didn't vote for the Trump, and you may be among them, I don't know, who said, okay, we are going to support civil society in America. We're going to give donations to the ACLU and to the ADL and to Planned Parenthood and to all sorts of organizations that are working to, maintain democracy and freedom and equality and justice and all those things. So much that the ACLU raised 7,000 times its annual development, okay, its annual fundraising in that 1 month of November. Okay, so my response is to say, why should that be different in Israel right now? Okay, that if we're unhappy or we want to push back against what the government is proposing, okay, and right now the Knesset session started just this past Sunday, the summer session, in which the legislative agenda is going back, in place. There are 155 different bills, different proposals that are being pushed through. The most prominent ones that are going first are the ones about the appointments for judges, essentially how judges are appointed. That's a major theme. In addition, something called the override clause, which will say that if it passes, it will say that the Knesset can override the Supreme Court, including those basic laws that I showed you, with a simple majority, right? A 51% majority. We call it a 2-to-1. So if only 3 people show up at the Knesset any one day, 2 beats 1. Okay, and we think that should be. A friend of mine asked me, he's like, well, what do you think the number should be? And I said, well, I think if you're going to override the Supreme Court, it should be however many it takes to also include the opposition in an override, because that is, at least resembles some sort of a consensus. Just like in the United States, how do you amend the Constitution? Bicameral, right? Okay, 2/3 in each house and 2/3 of the states. Okay, not something that could happen overnight. Okay, right? That's a lengthy process, and that is incredibly important, right? And all this is happening right now. So we, as a movement, are trying to say, well, wait a sec. Let's support this civil society. I'm not going to take you through all these different, but I'll just say, that there are these different agendas, and then, one is, I mentioned, Rothman and Levine. There they are. The Haredi agenda, you should be aware, because right now the issue is the law to exempt them from army service. Okay, and that is why they are insisting upon this low majority or simple majority override clause. But in the meantime, we're looking at serious laws that, like, when you think about a Jewish state, okay, what does it mean? It says that, there was a law passed just now over Pesach that we can't bring in chametz into a hospital, okay, during Pesach out of sensitivity. Could we just ask nicely, as this sign in Hebrew says, or do we have to, legislate it? Yeah, exactly. There's a big question right now about electricity production, okay? They just invented a gadget, essentially, that will capture electricity that was not produced on Shabbat, okay? And these are the kinds of things that we're looking at. And I'll just say, why is this important to us? Because, right, we want Israel to be a Jewish state that gives freedom of religion and freedom from religion as well. And we think that's so it depends on what we mean by Jewish, okay? And I see this a lot with students especially who say, I don't think a state should have a religion. And it's right. And we're saying, okay, when we say a Jewish state, we also mean character and values, but we also mean the Jews as a people, okay? Who we are, the notion of peoplehood, right? Just like the French have a country called France, and Americans have a country called America, right? And the Jews have a country called Israel, right? Israel has a country called Israel. And so that's just to clarify that. We're looking at what it means for people who used to be on the fringe of Israeli society now having to take responsibility, right, for being in the majority. And remember, Zionism was a revolutionary movement. What's worse for revolutionaries than losing? Yeah, winning sometimes. Because revolutionaries can turn from being revolutionaries now into bureaucrats. Okay, and we were all to fight against the British mandate, and we want to bring them up. And now we have to figure out how the post office works. Okay, how do we do streets and sanitation and set up welfare, education, healthcare, all those things that, like, we are completely ideologically driven, and that's it. We're working on customer service now. That's coming to Israel soon. I'm just kidding. Okay, but you can see the agenda here. This is the National Religious Party, or the Religious Zionist Party. I want to call them the Zealous Party. Okay, and these two guys, Smotrich and Ben-Gvir, you should also be familiar with them, who are driving an agenda basically of, okay, we're missing that piece, basically of saying we want to have separate rules for Jews and for non-Jews in Israel. And that's I think, part of the dangers, and you can't avoid that, this is from a few weeks ago, that Netanyahu is also embroiled in his own conflict, in his own issue. I want to just end, and here I'll just stop this. We can just, yeah, okay. Turn that, okay. We can, here, I'll just unplug it. Okay. I just want to end by, first of all, thanking you, because all of you who are members of ARTSA, by clicking that box on your dues statement, okay, that enables us to be there on the ground. It enables us to raise our voices on behalf of we like to round up and say, 2 million Reformed Jews in North America, and it also enables us to support our movement on the ground in Israel, right? Our Israeli Reform movement, of which, Stan and Risa, and Nico and I, and then Noga, we're all products of that movement, and they are the ones every Saturday night not only leading the protests and being part of that, but we also make sure to lead Havdalah before the protests. Okay, why is that? We do it publicly, and in every city, and people are coming in droves because we're saying our Jewish identity and our advocacy, our activism for democracy are not separate. Okay, that's the same, right? That's all part of it, right? And when we, fill in the famous phrase of Rav Kook, where he said, "Hayashan yitchadesh v'chadash yitkadesh," okay, that the old shall be made new, and the new shall be sanctified or made holy. Okay? That's what we're all about. Okay? That's why your support is so critical. And that's why what you do in your congregation and what you do in the broader, in the Bay Area at large, here and even in North America, what we tell our elected representatives, okay, I'm looking at Diane, right, in the JCRC, formerly, what we tell our elected representatives is really important. Okay, that we tell them that, yes, we are Zionists, we're committed to a secure Jewish and democratic state, and we want you to be also. Okay, that's really important. So I want to thank you for being involved here, and I know I have no doubt that with Nico now you will continue that and build on that. That is so incredibly important. I also, if you want to subscribe, I write a weekly thing that we send out because Nico, I was looking at this crowd here, and I said, you know what you guys need is one more email in your inbox on a Friday morning, okay, where you can follow along and there's opportunities to get involved, folks. As I have to make my way out, I just want to say that this crisis that we're facing in Israel is unprecedented. That there have been lots of protests and lots of okay. There've been huge crises. Yeah.
You think this is the biggest thing? Every generation has had that crisis.
So okay, maybe not unprecedented, yes. And we look at the famous protests in 1983 against the Lebanon War, and with Rabin throughout Oslo, and I've never seen. I think that the right wing, at least the coalition, anticipated that this would dissipate after a few weeks, that the protesters would experience some sort of fatigue, and to say, okay, Saturday night again, should we get a babysitter? Should we call, are we going to go out to the street? I don't think that they anticipate that it would continue 18 weeks now, okay, including during the week a number of days of disruption or this. I don't disagree with you that there have been massive, the Lavon affair and all these things throughout history. However, I think that we are seeing something that we actually truly haven't seen. Even comparing it to the 2011 tent protest, which lasted a month, 6 weeks, on the streets of Tel Aviv and many other cities around. Okay, I think that we are seeing something, and I don't think the answer is clear as to what's going to happen. There are a number of scenarios. I won't go into all of them right now. Okay. I do think, and this is my analysis, and you can argue, I do think that the protesters have made a significant impact on the country, whether you think the tactics are kosher or not, okay? It's all a question of where the line is. And I want to say that our movement is playing a role not only in reinventing what it means to be I'll get to it in one second, what it means to be Jewish in the Jewish state, okay? But also having a civic engagement there and having this responsibility that says, okay, our Torah tells us we should celebrate Shabbat, okay, but it also tells us how to treat other people. It also tells us, sort of how we have to live in communities. So with that, I want to just again thank you, and we need your involvement. We need all of you to, check that box and be members of ARTSA. And I want to thank Rav Davids. All you should get this book, Deepening the Dialogues, and hopefully you'll be able to study it. It's a great book club to do. And it's just been such an honor to be with you this Shabbat as you install your new, wonderful, incredible, charismatic, you get the point, Rabbi Nico Sokolovsky, who's, he's going to take you places, man. He's going to go. And I really look forward to continuing this conversation. And I'll say Toda Rabba and Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you very much. I am more than willing, it's 2:06, to hold until 2:15, okay? And just to allow conversation. You've been talked at a lot. Okay, short questions, and I promise short answers.
All parts of the Jewish community in our Northern California area have come together to work on the hundreds of thousands of Israelis that are trying to keep democracy in the form that it's in. Are there any examples you can give us or thoughts you can give us as a congregation, what we can do to support that effort in our congregations?
Okay, the question is, what can we do as a congregation? Basically, you all know the answer that I'm going to come up with, right? Not going to come up with anything. The level of participation matters. The number of bodies in the protest matter. The number of people sending out postcards or emails or calling friends matters. Sometimes we feel helpless, right? It's thousands of miles away. You're not hopeless. That would be my answer to you. It's mobilization followed by mobilization and getting people out. I have to tell you, I'll get you in a second. I have been quite upset about the last 3 months or so. I have noticed, and we can track it, the separation of American Jews from Israel is statistically real. And part of it is a product of what's going on now, built on what has been happening the last several years. So it's like a pyramid, and it's getting worse. Then I noticed hundreds of thousands of Israelis. And Risa knows this because I bore her by repeating myself. When I come up with something intelligent to say, I like to repeat it. Where are Americans marching at the same level against gun control or for gun control, whatever? Women's rights, the abortion issue. If Americans were taking to the streets at the same level, we would have more than 10 million Americans out on the streets protesting. And for the life of me, I don't understand why. So while we're severely critiquing Israel, let's worry a little bit about here, for God's sake. People know what's going on, and they sit attached to their electronic devices and do nothing. And that's scary too. Question.
Well, the problem is Chabad is going all over, spreading the word, but they're really orthodox and clean and welcome everyone. For every Chabad house, we need to have Shir Hadash in all parts of Israel. No Shomer Shabbat. I want to take the train. I want to take the bus. I want to take any public transportation to anywhere I want to go. Don't tell me what to do.
Okay, folks, there's several ways to approach a problem. One is to isolate enemies, and one is to build a positive program. And I'm much more in favor of building a positive program. Our failures as a movement are legion, okay? Legion. On the other hand, our strength is amazing. It's just not mobilized. And when you, the people, start demanding that the reform movement be visible, not just with press releases, with people. You see, I have a problem. In the 60s and 70s, Risa and I were on the streets all the time. I led a statewide effort on behalf of Soviet Jewry, ended up in Brussels at the first international conference, Black-Jewish relations. We were in the streets. And damn it, for the life of me, I don't know why we're not in the streets today. It annoys me enormously. So rather than say, yeah, Chabad does this, Chabad, yes, they do. Okay. What are we doing? Right? And if it's only critiquing the other guy, that's not much of an effort. Questions, please. Okay, you know, one of the things about a good idea is to look at what we in Hebrew call hashlachot, consequences. It might be a very good idea to leverage that money for Israel today on this issue. But once we do it once, it becomes a weapon that will be used frequently. The hashlachot, the consequences, could be dramatic. So I'm a hard nose, but I'm not willing to go to that. Am I willing to say, write to our Congress people, the senators, the representatives? Yes. State representatives? Yes. Local representatives? Yes. Organize. Street organizing? Yes. This requires a different kind of orientation. I am in many ways a follower of Mordecai Kaplan, of blessed memory. Mordecai Kaplan, the founder of Reconstructionism, is the one who invented the word peoplehood, invented the word peoplehood. I remember the first time I put it into my Google search, and it was rejected. Sorry, that's a dumb word, and it wouldn't do it. Now it's acceptable. First, it didn't know the word peoplehood. You see, unlike, I told you, sometimes I can contradict him. Unlike what Robert Weinberg said, there are French people and English people and Italian people and all those other German people, They do what they do. They're citizens of their country. But we Jews are constituted differently. It does not make us better. It doesn't make us worse. It makes us other. Okay? No, really. Oh, you know, you think a Jewish superior. No. We are members of a single people. What happens to one Jew in one country inevitably ricochets to other Jews elsewhere. I'm sure I'm the only one here who trembles when a high-flying Jewish financier ends up being convicted of massive fraud. And what does that have to do with me? I don't have enough money to be frauded. You know, it doesn't touch me. It's Jewish. It's me. It's me. That's why I have a right. Now, I'm a citizen of Israel. Reese is a citizen of Israel. We would, our children, nevertheless have the right to strongly protest. Look, when they change the law of return so that a grandchild, mixed family, cannot become an Israeli citizen automatically under the law of return, that's not just Israel's concern. That's the Gatos. That's here. That's everywhere. And you know what this whole thing is revolving around as well? The Ukrainians who are coming into Israel. You think this just popped up as an issue? There are a whole bunch of people who don't want to deal with Ukrainian mixed married families who want to figure out if they're Jewish. So you're looking at one part of an issue. Look a little bit underneath. It'd be ugly under there. Because I sat on the key committee dealing with conversion in the Jewish Agency, and I will tell you how the Russian Jews in that committee were attacked by international Jewish leaders for potentially screwing up the Orthodox rabbinate's control of Mihu Yehudi, of who's a Jew. And we sat there and listened to these people. Oh, these Russians, they know nothing. These Russians, they don't have papers. These Russians, that's the 1990s. They're not saying those words now, but I promise you, it's Ukrainians who are, the presence of Ukrainians who are pushing the ultra-Orthodox again to lock down the country. This ain't the Israel I am interested in supporting. Okay? I will not give up on Israel, but Israel, doggone well, better not give up on me. Jewish?
Because it tells me they have no idea what it means to be Jewish.
Okay, I'm going to give you, God, is this inappropriate? My Rebbe, my teacher of blessed memory, David Hartman, described the Jewish world as a big house. Many rooms. One door. You are either born into the Jewish people or you convert into the Jewish people, and then you find yourselves in a mansion. Are you going to be interested in Jewish art, and that's your thing? I take it. It's my example. You'll do it. Okay. Just because you're no longer going to be president soon, you should still respect rabbis. Now, and other people, music, okay, literature, okay, theology, philosophy, whatever. You wander the mansion of Jewish existence and you enter the rooms that attract you. That's how we do Jewish. If it's the religion, fine. There are a lot of really powerful, richly contributing Jews who are committed atheists. I want nothing to do with their money. They refuse to believe in God. When you hear that, the Messiah is almost here, right? No one's going to say that. No one's going to say that. Okay, you'll understand this. My wife just went this. And Risa, I have never, ever said no. So let me say thank you to you. Blessings to Nico, Noga, their family, to you, and to thank you for the privilege of being with you on a weekend which you guys, 20 years from now, we were there when Nico was first, and oh, look. Yeah, it's a historic occasion. Mazal tov v'hatzlacha. Thank you.